Hello everyone, thank you for joining us. Today we'll be introducing a new web-based tool called the Office Ergonomics Calculator. My name is Chelsea Bezina. I'm an ergonomist with the Occupational Health Clinics for Ontario workers based out of Ottawa. And before we begin, I want to talk to you about the inspiration behind this tool and why it was created. As some of you know, OHCOW is a nonprofit organization. We're funded by the Ministry of Labor, and one of our services is what we call group work. And this consists of ergonomic assessments. So as you can imagine, we get inundated with requests for office ergonomic assessments. And we simply don't have the resources to attend to every single worker in Ontario. So our goal is to foster self-sufficiency and foster independence in Ontario workplaces. And that's why we've created this easy-to-use tool. So I want to show you a short introductory video. This actually precedes our tool on our website, so if you click on our website, Ergo Tools, you'll be able to see it and you'll have access to it.
Are you constantly in pain at your office? Are you suffering from neck, shoulder, back, or wrist pain? You're not alone. Musculoskeletal disorders account for 35% of all lost time compensation claims in Ontario.
At the Occupational Health Clinics for Ontario workers, our goal is to promote the physical well-being of workers. We do that by fitting the workstation to the worker and by ensuring that the key musculoskeletal risk factors are reduced. Force, awkward posture, repetition, and contact stress are the main ergonomic risk factors. When you type and mouse with insufficient recovery time, repetition comes into play. Force is the amount of exertion required by your muscles to perform a task. Aggressively striking your keys can be considered forceful. Awkward or static postures are often caused by poor design or equipment selection. When your wrists are extended, when your neck is extended, or when you don't have adequate lumbar support, you are at increased risk for injury. Let's take a look at your workstation to see if we can make you comfortable. First, we're going to remove the footrest. We want to make sure the equipment is fit to you, not the other way around. I'm also going to lower your chair. Right now, your chair is too high, which causes a pressure point in the back of your leg and reduces blood flow. We'll lower your chair until we have a 90-degree angle in your knees. Next, we want to check the seat pan depth. Do you have room to place a full fist between the edge of the chair and the back of the knee? If not, then you will need a new chair with a shorter seat pan. Now I want to make sure that the keyboard and mouse height is appropriate for you. The keyboard and mouse should be situated at elbow height to ensure you have a 90-degree angle in your elbows. To achieve this, you will need a height adjustable keyboard tray. Avoid the trays with a slide-out platform for the mouse. They are unsteady and cause the mouse to be a few centimeters higher or lower than the keyboard. The top of the monitor should be aligned with eye height. Always make sure your neck is not flexed, extended, or twisted. If you wear bifocals, it should be 3 centimeters lower than eye height. Now your workstation is set up to fit you and you're working with a neutral posture. This will help reduce musculoskeletal disorders. Please note that this video was designed to provide general guidelines for setting up your workstation. Don't forget, maximizing adjustability and avoiding static postures through frequent movement is ideal. Some individuals may require more tailored solutions to address their workstation needs. Call an OHCOW office near you to seek further advice.
At OHCOW, we want to make sure that office workers can adjust their workstations according to their body proportions. That's why we created the Office Ergo Calculator. It can be found on our website. To use this tool, simply measure each component of your workstation with the help of the diagrams on your screen, and click Submit. With the help of this tool, you'll be able to find if your equipment is too high or too low. You will also get a table with ideal measurements. You should set up your workstation according to these to ensure an ergonomic setup. Your colleagues and Joint Health and Safety Committee can also use this tool to make sure that the office is healthy and free of ergonomic risk factors. Call an OHCOW office near you if you have questions or you need guidance with an assessment.
Before we dive into the details of the app, I just want to quickly discuss office ergonomics. I think this will give you a good base of knowledge when you use the tool. So by definition, Ergonomics is the science of studying people at work and then designing the working environment to make sure that they're safe, healthy, and comfortable. And this quote right here is something we use quite often in the world of ergonomics, and it's actually very, very important. The goal is to fit the job to the worker, not to fit the worker to the job. And we're going to see a few examples of this later on in the presentation. So first I want to talk to you about the base of the chair. As you know, the chair is extremely important when considering your office workstation. You want to make sure that you have 5 casters, so 5 wheels. It just provides a little bit more stability to the chair. And you want the casters to be the same circumference as the seat pan. So when you look down at your chair, you should actually be able to see the wheels peeking through a little bit. You want to purchase a chair based on the flooring that you'll be using. So you want to use hard casters for soft floors, such as carpet, and you want to use soft casters for hard floors, such as tile. You want a rounded front edge. We call that the waterfall seat pan. You want to be able to adjust the seat slope and, of course, adjust the seat pan depth. The seat pan depth, I would say, is one of the more common misconceptions in office ergonomics. A lot of people have a seat pan that's too deep. And one of the ways that you can actually test this is to place your fist, right behind your knee at the back of the chair. And if you have place to fit a full fist, then your seat pan is adequate. If you don't have that room, then you might want to consider finding a different chair. That's considered the fist test, as we saw in the video. So you can see in this example, this is actually one of my former clients. You wouldn't actually have room to place a fist in this situation. So in this case, the chair was not adequate. It did not fit the user. In terms of the seat height, as you know, we need a 90-degree angle. That's the golden rule in ergonomics. So when you're sitting, look at the seam of your pants, and you'll be able to see whether or not you're in a nice 90-degree angle. You can also ask a colleague to help you out and make sure that you are sitting in that nice neutral posture. Another example here, on the left you have my nice coworker, Tracy. Hi, Tracy. She's at a 90-degree angle. And then on the right, there's an example of somebody who's not sitting in a 90-degree angle. So in that situation, you would want to lower the chair. The armrest. You want to make sure that your shoulders are able to relax when you're seated. So you want to position your armrest so that they're slightly below elbow height, and that way you're not forced to use them all the time. So the summary for the chair is to always choose comfort and function over aesthetics. We always see this big leather chair. Try to avoid it. It doesn't fit most users. So you want to make sure that your equipment is always adjustable and fit to you, of course. For the keyboard trays, again, we want a 90-degree angle in the elbows. And we want to make sure that you're able to keep your arms as close to the body as possible. A lot of people ask if they need a keyboard tray, and that's quite a complex question. And I have some data here. The average desk height is 75 centimeters. On average, men have an average seated elbow height of 68.8 centimeters, and women of 64.3. So this actually wouldn't allow the user to have a nice 90-degree angle in the elbow. So that's why the keyboard tray is really important. It allows you to position your elbow properly. And as you can see here, 50% of people wouldn't be able to work without a keyboard. So these are examples of keyboard trays to avoid. In the first example, we have a keyboard tray with a slide-out platform. A lot of people have this tray. What people don't know or understand is that this actually leads to the mouse being a centimeter lower or higher than the keyboard tray. And it's actually quite flimsy. So people tend to lean on that side, and it doesn't actually have the ability to stand up to their weight. So they end up leaning on the one side, which causes a lot of problems for the user, especially for the right hip. So if you notice that you have any right hip pain, check out your keyboard tray. The second example is a keyboard that is on a rail platform. So this allows the user to actually pull out the tray, but you can't measure it in height or adjust it in height or angle, so that's definitely a problem. And the third example here doesn't actually have room for a mouse. So you can see that the keyboard tray fits nicely on the tray. But what would happen in this situation is the user would end up putting the mouse on top of the desk, which would end up being too high. So there's the answers for you guys. And this is an example of an ideal keyboard tray. So it's very simple. It's just a flat, solid, sturdy surface. And we want it at least 65 centimeters in width. This allows the keyboard and the mouse to sit comfortably on it. We also want you to have a wrist rest. This just provides a little bit more support for the wrist. You can see in the first example here on the left, there's an angle on the wrist, and we always want a nice straight line on the wrist. So providing that wrist rest improves that. It reduces awkward postures. The screen height, definitely avoid having it too low. That causes neck flexion. Avoid having it too high. That causes the neck to be extended. And don't place it on the side. Then you end up having twisting. So that's definitely problematic as well. The ideal screen height is when the monitor is directly in front of you. You want it situated at approximately eye level and about an arm's length away from the user. Now, we know this information seems really easy to understand, but we know from experience that it's also easy to forget, especially if you're not dealing with office ergonomics on a daily basis. And that's why we've created this web tool. We want to help you set up your workstation with confidence and with ease. And this calculator actually takes all of your individual body measurements into consideration when giving you a table of ideal measurements. And it takes all of the information that you learned today into consideration. So I'm actually going to pass it along to Trevor Schell, an ergonomist out of the Sudbury location, and he's going to do a demonstration of the app.
Okay, thanks, Chelsea. I'd like to ask my volunteer, Tiana, to come in and have a seat. She's going to be our subject in order to do the assessment. So to begin with, there's a number of measurements we have to do. And on the web-based tool, there's actually moving arrows that are going to help you figure out where it is you need to measure from. So the first value we're going to do is the seat pan height. So in this example, we're going to measure from the floor to the top of the seat. So in this case, it is 60 centimeters high. The next one we're going to do is armrest height. So that's from the floor to the top of the armrest. So in this case, 76 centimeters. We'll measure, actually, no, can I get to sit up here? I need to measure seat depth. So for the seat depth, we measure from the back of the seat to the front of the seat. So in this instance, it is 55 centimeters. Okay, thank you. You have to sit here. Workstation height from the floor. So I'm going to measure from the floor to the top of the desk, which is 73 centimeters. We're now going to measure screen height, which is from the floor to the top of the monitor. So here, it's 113 centimeters. Next is keyboard height. So we measure from the floor to the top of the keyboard, which is 75 centimeters. Now, you may notice that the mouse is actually up on the desk. This is the third example of the poor keyboard tray that Chelsea said. So in this instance, it is 77 centimeters high from the floor to the top of the mouse. Now, we're going to actually measure the physical user of the workstation, so in this case, Deanna. So I'm going to begin with what's called the celiac popliteal length. That's from the back of the buttocks to the back of the leg. So in this instance, Deanna is 47 centimeters for her buttock popliteal. Now, interesting enough, popliteal height is normally from the floor to the underside of the leg. However, Deanna has a chair up so high, she can't even touch the floor. So in this instance, I want to measure from the bottom of her foot to the underside of her leg. If I measure from the floor, it's going to be actually too high of a distance. So to be accurate, from the foot to the underside of her leg, which is 49 centimeters. Now, if it was knee height, because her feet are off from the floor, it would normally be 4 to the top of the knee. But because of that space, we're going to measure from the underside of her foot to the top of her knee. So that is 59 centimeters. Next, it's going to be seated elbow height. So from the floor to to the underside of her elbow. Just hold your arm at 90 degrees for me. Perfect. That is 75 centimeters. And staring straight ahead, we're going to measure from the floor to the middle of her eye, which is 126 centimeters. Okay, so now that we've entered our measurements, we hit the submit button, and what we'll get is a table very much like this. So in this instance, it's telling us there's a strong degree of mismatch with the data. So for Tiana specifically, because her feet are off the floor, we want to make sure that we actually lower her chair down. I'm going to go for a bit of a ride.
Okay.
Yeah. So now she actually has that 90-degree angle in her chair. Now, we could also use the data, physically measure, to make sure that her seat pan height is exactly at 44 centimeters. That way we know for sure that this is where the measurements are. With respect to seat depth, it's still too deep for her. So if you can just stand up for one quick second. A lot of chairs actually come with either the ability to adjust, the ability to adjust the seat depth, or come in smaller sized chairs. So one of the recommendations with this tool is that it will tell you the ideal depth of this chair that you need to get. So in this instance, we can now do the fist test between the front of the chair and the back of her leg. Now, it is very important to note that if you do buy a chair that has a depth adjustable ability, that the minimum depth of the chair is 19 inches. You can never make it less deep than that. You can make it deeper, but not less deep. So as a result, if you're buying a chair with a depth adjustable feature, you're better off going with a chair that's about 17 inches, which should accommodate about 90% of your staff, and they can be made longer for taller individuals. Now, with respect to the armrests are actually too high as well. So there should be a little button right here. When we're sitting, as Chelsea said in her presentation, you should just be able to glide over the top of the armrest without hitting them. Can you actually do that? Bring your arms right beside your body, swing them out. Perfect.
Yeah, I don't
So she's just grazing the top of them. The armrests are there to give your arms a rest. You should not be using them when you're actually typing because of the fact that it can give a pressure point on the base of the elbow. At the same time, if they're too high, you're going to end up sitting and have strain on your shoulders, which will lead to long-term neck and shoulder pain. So it's better to have it right below and actually use your armrest to give your arm a physical rest. Now, with respect to the keyboard tray, obviously way too high. So we have to bring that down as well. So 62 centimeters high. Perfect. We would then tighten that off. Now, with respect to the mouse, it's also supposed to be at 62 centimeters high, but there's no room to actually put the mouse on the tray. We're going to talk in a couple minutes about the limitations of this tool, but basically one of the limitations is that it assumes you have all the necessary equipment to make the adjustable features. And of course, the monitor should be sitting at 117. It's actually a bit too low. So because it's not an adjustable monitor, we would actually have to put something underneath it in order to bring that screen up or purchase an adjustable monitor. So now that we have that table, what do we do with it? Because we now have a listing of our ideal heights and measurements. Well, when you actually do it, you get a unique assessment ID. So you can actually email this ID number to an ergonomist, to your Joint Health and Safety Committee, your purchasing person, or your immediate supervisor. And they can then enter in the ID number and call up your report that would list the actual ideal measurements in order to determine what you would actually need for making changes. Now, the benefits of the tool is that it's easy to use. We actually did a pilot test of it prior to the launch and actually found there was a 7% error rate amongst users. We've now actually redid the error that people were having trouble with. We've modified it, and so now the error has actually gone down significantly. It's also a benefit to Joint Health and Safety Committees because it reduces the assessment cost for an average worker. To have someone come in and perform an assessment will run actually $400 per person. For professionals in the field, It can be used on a smartphone, tablet, or desktop, and add the ideal measurements and the ergonomic report that you produce. And for purchasing, it's a cost reduction associated with purchasing the wrong equipment. I will also give an example of a government ministry I did work with. They went out and bought 200 new chairs for their employees. I was then called in to do a presentation to them on office ergonomics. However, when I got there, I realized something's wrong with these chairs. It turns out the chairs were too high for 60% of the staff and too deep for 75% of the staff. As a result, they had spent $50,000 on new chairs just to find out they needed to spend another $30,000 to get the chairs to accommodate that 75% of the population that wasn't being met by it. So it's very important to know buying abilities before you go into purchasing mass amounts. Not everyone's built the same. Office equipment is designed for the average male, who's 5'10", but the average female is 5'4". So as you saw when we were doing the examples, if that chair, that was the only size of it, it would have been way too deep for Tiana. So we would have to have bought a new chair. So the tool gives us the ability to purchase specifically for that individual, as opposed to saying, we're all getting this chair, and as a result, you're stuck with it. So as a result, it actually works out to be a cost-benefit bonus to anyone using it. Some of the limitations, well, promote static posture. Posture variety is the key. Now, you can make slight changes to your chair. Chelsea was talking about 90 degrees. Well, actually, it's anywhere from 90 degrees to 110 degrees, for example, for the back angle. You can make slight height changes to your chair. For every 5 minutes or for every hour of work, get up and walk around for 5 minutes. Get the blood flow and circulation going. On break time, don't go from your sitting at your desk to sitting in the lunchroom. Actually get up and walk around. Some anatomical structures are difficult to measure, so there were some human error in the measurements. That's where that 7% rate came from. It's a tool. It's not an actual assessment. It does not address medical conditions. It does not address workspace layout, and more tailored solutions may actually be required. And of course, there's no recommendations provided. It assumes you have the proper equipment. So in the example of what we did, we would need a wider keyboard tray and a height adjustable monitor in order to accommodate what Tiana's physical dimensions were. So as a result, what we'll often see is people will take that unique ID, copy it, put it in an email, send it to Chelsea and I, and we're actually able to call it up and actually help them determine what recommendations they actually need in order before going out and purchasing any new equipment. Okay, so that concludes our presentation. Do we have any questions from anyone here in the audience?
Yeah, so there are a few questions coming in from online.
Oh, online as well.
So the first question is, what about adjusting the screen height and keyboard height when you are using a stand-up, sit-down desk?
Okay, great question. The actual dimensions when I'm sitting, so basically from my hip to my eye, when I'm sitting, when I'm standing, that length does not change. So if I have a sit-stand workstation, when I have it set up properly at the proper height, when I'm sitting for my monitor and my keyboard on my desk, when I bring that up, I should not have to readjust the monitor because, as I said, that length doesn't change. The only time there'd be a difference is if someone was actually performing the measurements on you and you were slouching in your chair, and then you're going to stand up. So make sure that when you are doing the measurements for the web-based tool, that you are sitting straight.
Another question that we have from the online audience is, what do we do if our chair and desk needs to go lower, but it's as low as it can go? Okay. Well, office chairs come with a standard cylinder. That's what allows you to move the chair up and down. But you can purchase a lower cylinder. So as a result, if you need your chair to get lower, you would actually just replace the cylinder and you could drop it down significantly differently. What was the second part of the question? What do we do if our chair and desk needs to go lower, but it's as low as it can go? So desk. Standard desk height is you really can't do a lot with it. Once again, you should be having a keyboard tray at your desk to allow you to be able to use your keyboard and mouse at the exact same height. If you don't have a keyboard tray,
my number one recommendation is get a keyboard tray. If you have a height adjustable desk, and it's as low as it can go, that begins to become a bit more of a problem, especially if you want to keep the height adjustable desk. I mean, ultimately, you could put a keyboard tray on it, but you've also spent a great deal of money. Some height adjustable desks can cost as much as $5,000. Now, I did a call to a local company here in town prior to having the webinar, and I just said, what would it cost to get a lower base for a height adjustable workstation? A lot of desks, the lowest setting was 24.5 inches. With an extendable base, you can get it down as low as 22.5 inches. I was told there's basically two trains of thoughts out there. One supplier, they don't sell the lower extender. You have to buy a whole new desk. So that'd be another $5,000. The other supplier that was mentioned to me is they sell the extender, but it's an additional $2,000. So by just buying a workstation generically, it could cost you $10,000 to $7,000, everything in to retrofit. That's why this app becomes so important, because it also has a sit-stand feature to it as well. So by putting in the standing elbow and standing eye height, it will actually tell you that range you need from seated elbow height to standing elbow height that you need your workstation to be. So if you come in at, say, 23 inches, and you know that the product you're going to be buying has a minimum height of 24.5 inches, you know either you have to put a keyboard tray on it or go back to your supplier and get a lower range prior to purchasing it.
Great. So someone else asked, what parameters are most important to get right?
Well, I always say we start with the chair. Everything is from the chair up. So, of course, seated elbow height, feet flat on the floor, knee at a 90-degree angle, that's where we're going to start. Then we want to make sure we can do that fist test. If we can't do that fist test, automatically we need a smaller chair. Because if that seat is actually 2B, what's going to end up happening is that you're going to get a pressure point. And subconsciously what we do is we actually slide forward in our seat. So any benefit of that backrest and lumbar support is completely gone. So that's the first thing, is always start with the chair. Then, of course, the keyboard height. Well, if it's on the desk, you know you're going to need a keyboard tray. Make sure you get a keyboard tray that's at least 65 centimeters wide to accommodate the keyboard and the mouse. And then finally, the monitor. Making sure that the top of the monitor is exactly level with seated eye height, or if you're a bifocal wearer, about an inch lower than seated eye height.
Great. Someone else asked, what are your thoughts on adjustable stand-up desks?
Adjustable stand-up desks. A couple years ago, the media ran with one study that came out. And they basically said that sitting is the new smoking. It's going to kill you. And to me, running with one story is not a good idea. It comes down to the whole butter versus margarine thing. Is sitting going to kill you? No, it's not. Is alternating how we work good? Yes, it is. I mean, we said that the app itself promotes more of a static posture, whereas you want to be dynamic, switching it up, getting the blood flow and circulation going. So having a desk that adjusts up and down is going to get you standing upright. The other interesting thing to note, though, is that when we go from a standing to a sitting posture, we actually double the amount of pressure in the disc of our lower back. So by standing, we are reducing the amount of pressure in our lower back. Personally, I will recommend a standing workstation if someone is experiencing severe low back problems. That's the number one time I will actually do it, is if they have severe problems where that sitting is increasing that pressure and they find it very uncomfortable and can't perform their task. So by elevating a workstation up, having everything properly, and importantly, having a footrest underneath so you can put one foot up on it. What you're going to end up doing is alternating your feet during the course of the day. That takes the force of your body from acting on straight on your lower back and actually transfers it to your hips.
Great. Someone else asked, what should our next step be if after our self-assessment we require accommodation?
In that instance, as we said, one of the limitations of the tool is that it doesn't address any personal medical issues, and it assumes you have the proper equipment. So as I said, what you could do is take the self-assessment ID number, copy-paste that, and email that to an ergonomist, an OHCOW ergonomist. We can then plunk in the number and call up your values and work with you to make sure that you have the right equipment that you actually need.
We have one last question here, and they ask, do studies indicate that a standing workstation or a sit-stand workstation can prevent back and knee discomfort?
Well, I think I already addressed the back one, that when we go from standing to sitting, it doubles the amount of pressure in the lower back. In terms of knee, really hard to say because we are standing. We are putting pressure on our knees. Our whole weight of our upper body is acting there. At the same time, when we go to sit, we're actually bending our knees. So it's kind of a switch up between the two. I don't really know if research has actually been done in depth to actually look at knee. It always seems to be focused on the lower back with respect to sit-stand stations.
Those are all the questions we have for today.
Great. Well, listen, on behalf of everyone, thank you for attending. And I'd like to thank Chelsea again for being part of this. And if you have any questions, please contact the OHCOW clinic nearest you.